Hello and welcome to my tutorial. Here you have me painting, like putting some paints on a palette. I like this kind of stuff, this kind of montages, so I added one for my own. And this is a wet on wet technique. You see me here wetting the surface before beginning. I do this in order to allow the paint to spread when I leave it on the paper. For this tutorial, I like to show you how I turn this very undistinguishable blob into a nice painting. Of course, I've cut out all the time waiting for the paint to dry, as well as the times that I needed for mixing, just so you wouldn't be sitting at the paper staring at nothing happening. And you can see here how I work with my own mistakes and how I deal with my decisions. The way I leave the color just enough on the paper to leave a mark that doesn't have to be distinguishable. It's something subtle that can only be seen as a big picture, like subtleties under the full painting. And yes, so at the beginning I hope you'll be able to hear the nice birds that are singing outside. And when I was painting the work, they were singing. It was early morning and I liked that very much, so I thought I would just leave that in the beginning. Maybe you enjoy it. I always find birds make me happy, like those cute little sounds. And I don't know, I guess that shows somehow in the painting because I mean, she's very bright, she's very sweet, she has a smile. For the sunflowers, I worked with a very layerish technique. I added and added and added on the surface. As you can see, I used both unmixed colors right out of the primary source, as well as mixed colors in order to create contour. And yeah, the sleeve was a very fast thing to draw. I used this technique to create a standing out position. The hardest thing to do was to wait for the paint to dry. I always lose patience when that happens. So yeah, that kind of happened here too. Like should I wait? Should I not? What do I do now? The paint spreads because it's wet. I do like doing that, building a shape first slowly and undistinguishable, and then contouring it, giving it the final precise delimitation. The beginning of the painting was done with wet surface, and then I left it to dry, just so it would allow me to easily create the forms. Here I'm drawing very small strands of hair on her sun-backed lit figure. I would have liked to create a more shining, glowing atmosphere around them, but it didn't really work. I tried to create that by adding stronger values inside of the head, so as the color goes into the form, as into final color is actually a brownish reddish tone of hair, but the outsides stay this white, lovely yellowish glowing color. It's something that you notice if you look at people sitting in the sun with the back to the sun and the face to like you, and you see that the hair strands glow, and it's a very nice effect. It gives them a shine. Moving to the hand was a very boring stage. I don't really enjoy shaping hands. I wanted to give it the same kind of inside full aspect, so I focused on putting the color into the middle of the hand, just so I would give the outer edge a kind of glow, a kind of shine. Skin is slightly transparent, so you can try that either by adding saturated colors or by simply leaving the outer side of the hand less colored. For the face, as you can see, I went with a very thin brush. I like alternating between this thick very full brush with a round tip and this very thin brush with the same round tip. I also use flat brushes, but in this case I just didn't feel like searching for them. I was kind of lazy. It just happens, you know, you start drawing and you have two brushes by your side and you just go with those, even though you have a full stack of them, like a stretch hand like to the left. So, you know, they weren't tucked somewhere hidden. They were like at the reach of my hand, but I still didn't let go of that. It's a limiting thing that allows you to focus on the surface, on what you're doing, because if you like stay and think, what brush do I use now, or what brush do I use for this, what brush do I do for that, and that can take away your creativity, the way you work. The inspiration can go back. Like when you zone in, it's better if you don't interrupt yourself and focus on what you're doing, not thinking, oh, it's time to change the brush, that's very important for my process. Like, no, I don't do that. It's not my thing. Maybe it works for you, maybe it will help you work better. For me, especially at this size, the paper is not very big, as you can see, so it wasn't that big of a tragedy. Like if it was an A3 paper, yeah, maybe that would have mattered, because A3, I mean, it would have taken me forever. One side of the paper would have dried by the time I would have reached the other side, and if I wanted to add a big block of color, I would have needed a bigger painting brush. At this point, the face already takes shape. You can distinguish the mouth, the cheeks. You can see me like fixing the color with my hand. I do that with my finger. It's like the smudge, the traditional smudge tool, the finger. When I don't use tissues, I use the finger. The finger is there to do the job. A very reliable finger, by the way. Just saying. And yeah, what else can I tell you? Is you see me, I added a thicker layer on the hair, the darker brown, to create contour, and that worked very well. The way these are gouache paints, by the way, so of course they looks more saturated when they're wet, and when they dry they fade out a bit. So it's always an experience creating the form and the shapes and the contrast. I tried to add more yellow strands of hair, like as if they're glowing. She has curly hair, which is a lovely type of hair with a lot of volume, so it allows me to create this form of individual strands going everywhere. With straight hair you can't really do that, because straight hair like sits flat. That's the desired look of a straight hair, to sit flat and not bend. The one thing that I like to do when I'm working on a small surface is to alternate between working on one form and then moving to another. So I work on the hair, I let it dry, then I work on the sunflowers, let them dry, maybe I go to the dress and work there a bit more, just to make sure that all the surface is dry when I'm working with it. At this point I don't really like adding wet on the paper. I like to control my strokes very precisely. As you can see, I am creating the darkest shadows. A way to work with this, I could have just added a red there and have it like glowing, but I wanted the contrast to be on the chin. I wanted her head to stand out, so I went for this contrasty brown. I also added some strands up the hair, just so it wouldn't look out of place. And then I added the whites of the eye, as well as a bit of the sclera, because it was kind of invisible. Here I zoomed in a bit and you can see me detailing the sunflowers. It was very nice. On the other side, you can also see the details in the hair. In the end, I ended up removing some of the yellow strands on her head because they were in a position that didn't seem to fit. So those yellows over the shoulder disappear at the end. They don't stay there. I used a darker tone of brown to design again the shape of the sunflowers. If you noticed earlier, they were yellowish orangey and undefined, so I went with this darker tone and defined them, and then I added some shadows on the petals of the sunflowers because while they are completely yellow from start to finish, you do sometimes see one or two petals that have like a orangey nuance at the bottom of the petal. And also because I wanted to create a sense of volume and shadow, like the sun hits the tip of the petal and the lower side kind of gets the rim light from the seeding part, the seeds part. I don't know how they call that. I also added a sunflower in her hair. You can see it there. It's very pretty and nice and looks good. Thought it would be a nice touch. And here I'm using an orange, very strong orange right out of the tube. The paints were wet when I worked on this, so it was easy to get it. And I create a visible contrasting tone on the hair, but I take out the brightest yellows because I didn't feel like they belonged there. And now I am creating a very nice pattern on the dress. I like doing that with dresses. Creating some kind of pattern makes them slightly more interesting than simple one unique color. And I keep adding contrast on the bottom. And then I remember that she has a sleeve, and I try to again enforce the shadow side of the sleeve. And I ran back and forth from the hair to the costume and so on. I like doing that. It keeps a variety. It doesn't bore me. Like if I were to work on just one part, it would be, first, it would take a lot more time, and second, it would be very boring. I mean, the most important part for me is the face and the swiggly curly hair. So if I don't do that, it's like, what am I doing? Here I am adding the background. I used again the wet on wet technique, and there you have it. A very simple flower girl in the fields with sunflowers in her arms. I hope you enjoyed this video. As you'll do in the YouTube community, just hit the like, subscribe, tell a friend if you liked it, and I'll see you again next week with another one of these, because there are more girls coming. Nice hearing you. Bye.